Yeah, so thank you all for being here today. I just got back to USA from Europe. I was in Italy. I did a whole Europe trip for a couple months, and I'm in Texas right now. I made it back to the USA, and I'm very happy to be here. And I'm gonna go through some of the questions. We have a bunch of questions in the group from last week, and I'm pulling up the PowerPoint right now so I can with my Spoke app in here. It hasn't really been behaving very well. I use the app to transcribe all my videos, so if I ever wanted to use it to make articles, I can, but I don't ever do it. It should be better. So let's go to my participants. Let's invite, copy invite link. Confirm. Okay. So let me open this up. So well, we have a lot of people in here. I'm glad to see that we're getting a lot more people in the meetings. Nice to see you, C. Tony, my man. Got some new names. Sapelu, Marco, Leon, Javier. A new Benz, you look new too. So I'm gonna go through. I have a list of the questions that my team put together. Danny's my marketing expert on the team, who's helping me with a lot of this stuff. Yeah, nice to see you. See, I hope all is going well. So yeah, I'm gonna go through some of these questions and mute everyone fast. I have a checklist I'm going through. Test mic, you can hear me. I don't even have a separate mic. I'm just using the phone, I think. So let me check this. I'm using is the microphone better now? Oh wait, or is it better now? Is the mic better now? Before or after? Before or after testing? Before it was better. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go back to same system. So okay, so I'm back to before. When I get back to set up my real studio, then I'll be able to have even better audio with an actual microphone. Let me see if I can, but whatever, this is gonna work for now. So let's go into some of the questions. I'm going to leave it like this, and after every question, I'll come back and I'll check the chat. So the first question I have this week is, hi, how can an LLC borrow money? Send from a private account with the title on the bank transfer. I don't know what that means. Do I need to make documentations or return it by bank transfer and sometime and everything is done solved? Can I borrow without commissions? So borrow and return the same amount. So this is not enough real detail here, but can an LLC borrow and lend money? The answer is yes, of course. If you're the only owner of an LLC, you can send money to someone and you can lend someone money personally, and it would be like a distribution from your LLC. So there's not really much documentation you need to do. If it's an official loan from your LLC to a third party, I would always encourage signed agreements. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to get your money back if they decide not to pay you. But if you're talking about like giving your uncle $5,000, you don't really need to do anything for that, especially if it's from an LLC and there's no corporate tax election. Borrowing and transferring money in and out of a company when it's an LLC don't matter as much, but when it's a corporation, it matters much more because it's an independent entity. So even if you take money to yourself, it needs to be a distribution, a salary, a payment, or if it's a loan, it technically should have proper documentation. If you don't have that, and the IRS decides to audit you, which apparently is going to happen a lot more with their $80 billion in funding, which I'm going to hit on a lot in this call, then they might deem it as a distribution, charge you tax on the corporate level, and then also tax on the personal level as a dividend distribution. This is a very open-ended question, so that's why I give a number of different examples. So if you just have an LLC, foreign or U.S. person, you can kind of send money wherever you want without much issue. The only issue the IRS has is if you decide to call it an expense. If you call it a loan, then technically you should have interest income, but it's not really an expense, so it doesn't lower your income tax. So from an LLC perspective, you can kind of do whatever you want. The question of how can an LLC borrow money, and that would be like, it's harder in the US for usually they want a co-signer to be a person. So an LLC can lend money pretty easily, and borrowing money, it depends on the terms of who's lending you the money. So it's a little bit different It's case by case, but it borrows money just like any other person. But usually with an LLC, the owner is going to be the guarantee or the guarantor of the funds. Beautiful. Is it possible to make YouTube videos about investing using an LLC? For example, I will have 100,000 in profit next year in my new LLC. Congratulations for you. Can I, for example, invest 40,000 as an LLC in crypto and 40,000 in physical silver 1 ounce coins? I would recommend gold. Personally, I don't know. I don't recommend investments generally, but if you need to buy wholesale gold, please contact me. I do have a really trusted client who has a big vault in Panama, and I recommend them. I've been to the vault, I've seen it. So if you want to buy gold, I can introduce you to a wholesaler who, again, stores the gold offsite. So it's pretty cool. So if you do want to buy gold, I can help you with that. But anyways, that's not the question. The question is, so I will not pay tax on this 80,000 USD yet, only on the profit. So the question is, if you have $100,000 in profit, how can you invest that money so you don't have to pay tax on it? You can't. The answer is you can't. You can't just take profits and then just invest it in something and have it be an expense unless it's equipment or something used for your business. If you buy some crypto, then it needs to be as an expense. It needs to be buying crypto so that you can pay employees or so you can pay somebody. If you want to buy coins or silver coins, again, it's not an expense, so it won't lower your tax. And this is assuming you're paying tax in the US. If you're not paying tax in the US, then it doesn't matter from the US standpoint, but I guess it would matter from your standpoint. Potentially, if you are, let's say if you're in another country and you can maybe you can get away with buying a bunch of crypto and coins and calling it an expense in your country. Maybe you can get away with it, but from the US tax perspective, it would not be considered an expense because has no business purpose based on the question. So the answer is if you are, the answer is that simple. If you have profits, the only thing to lower your income tax, especially in the US, is what I'm always referring to, is to have more business expenses, potentially buy equipment if you need it. Like maybe if you bought $50,000 worth of computer equipment, you can expense it right away. But you can't just buy crypto and buy silver coins and call it a business expense. It doesn't work like that. I've completed W-9 as a partnership LLC for tax purposes. I've been asked about members of my company. However, I've just used my company as a US signatory. What should I do now? I hope it makes sense. Well, if someone's trying to pay you and they need to verify your tax status, the W-9 should be enough. In my experience, personally, if I use a W-9 for a multi-member LLC, I've never had anyone ask for the members. I don't think they're within their right to ask, but if they ask and say, if you don't tell us, we're not going to pay you, then that's kind of where you are. What you have to figure out, you have to figure out if you're going to tell them and get paid or not tell them and fight it and maybe get paid. But technically, I don't think you're required to tell them information about your company from a tax standpoint. But they can definitely request a W-9 or a W-8 to verify your tax status. That's completely acceptable, and that's something that is very standard. But to ask for who the owners of the partnership are is a little, I don't think it's necessary for them. But in the end, they can ask you whatever they want. If you don't give it to them, they don't want to pay you. That's on them. That's between you and them. Having a single member, foreign-owned LLC, I will participate as a member in another business with an operating LLC with 2 members. Which option will you advise regarding my current situation? Being a member as a U.S. person or with my LLC. As a person, I should pay the 30 or 37% tax, and being member LLC. Well, it depends on residency, and it technically, if there's a foreign member of the question is like, how should I structure ownership? Can my LLC own another LLC? I guess is the question. But the real question is, does the main operating business have a U.S. trade or business in the U.S.? And if so, technically, you just using a single member LLC wouldn't necessarily stop you from being subject to withholding, and that withholding should be done on the partnership level, the operating company level. So at the end, as a person, I don't really, there's not really enough information here for me to advise too much more. If it's a US trade or business and there's foreign partners and US partners, generally would use a corporation just to avoid all of the withholding taxes, which are going to be, 37% is a lot. The income tax on a corporation is 21%. And then when you do the 15% dividend, if it's subject to 15% at treaty rates, that gets up to 37%, but you have more control over the timing. Okay. So Leon, if you want to follow up with more questions, with more details, I can kind of help, but it sounds like if you have a US trade or business and there's US partners and foreign partners, generally it's easier and cheaper from a tax perspective to use a corporation or an LLC that's paying taxes as a corporation in the US. So you don't have to do the withholding and you can kind of structure the ownership however you want. Great question from Marco. Hi, from a FinCEN perspective, is a Wise dollar bank account considered a US or foreign bank account? Thanks. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I mean, we can look it up really quick. Let's see. If it's no, a Wise bank accounts are in US dollars. I think is TransferWise a US bank account for like a US person. That's good. I should know that too. Considered a TransferWise is a borderless account regulated by the Financial Conduct Authorities in the UK and is considered as a foreign account for US residents and citizens. Interesting. Didn't know that. I mean, that's from Intuit. That's not from TransferWise, but there's no tax on this. So if you want to do it right and you're a US citizen and you're subject to, oh, that's really interesting, actually. Okay, let me see this. Wise is registered with FinCEN and is licensed as a money transmitter in the States and is supervised by the states. So in other US states, it's offered by phone. Okay, so I think if you open a Wise account with your LLC, it's considered a US account, and I don't think it would be considered a foreign account, because if you have a foreign account with your LLC, technically that is subject to the FinCEN FBAR filing requirements. But that's really great. I love doing. Look, I'm learning stuff too. But it looks like since Wise US Inc. is registered in the US and licensed by, I think, all the states, in many states, and it's not technically a bank, I think all of those reasons you should be fine opening a US Wise account with your LLC. It's a very interesting question, though. If you open, it depends where you open the account. And when you go on Wise, you can open accounts in different countries. So that's a great question. Is Wise subject to FinCEN reporting requirements? And the answer is maybe, but if you open a US account with your US company or as a US person, then no. But if you're a US citizen who is also a Australia resident and you open a Wise account in Australia as an Australian resident, then it would be considered a foreign account. So that's a great question, Marco. Yeah, I think it's non-US residents don't have FBAR reporting requirements, however, so it's only for LLCs and US citizens and green card holders. Okay, I have a question about Stripe. If anyone has any experience, I'm struggling with the registration because I don't know what type of account to set up. If I register as a US LLC, it wants a US address for Stripe, but I'm sure I'm supposed to register in my home, country. But then my options are sole trader or company, and I don't have a UK company. What's the best to register as a sole trader with Stripe or as a single member LLC? So if you have how to register with Stripe, I can, in my course, I have a tutorial where I do it on the screen, and I have to update that. So the next person that, yeah, I don't really push the course very much, but you do need a US address. Maybe you have to pay for one. All of our clients that with our Peace of Mind packages, our expert expansion ecosystem packages, whatever we're helping people with, they can use our addresses, and that's what we would put on the Stripe account. And then what's interesting with Stripe is that they need to know about the business. They want the formation docs, EIN, your US address, but they also want to know the KYC, the know your client. So at the end, it's possible that if you're a UK person, you have to put in your UK tax number and maybe upload your UK passport and your UK home address. So they want to know who you are, no matter where you're from in the world. But yeah, for a US company, you still need some kind of US business address and potentially US phone number. And there's different ways to pay for that, to set that up. But it's something that you need. That said, I would still recommend it. Stripe is great. I've set up mini Stripe accounts. As you scale, they'll ask more and more questions. But if you're doing legitimate business, you should be able to get through a lot of that. They really don't like drop shippers. No one does anymore. I mean, no one does in terms of payment processors and everything. But yeah, I mean, that's really kind of it with Stripe. Oh, a lot of questions in here. Okay, so let me go back to one more on here because these are easier. Oh, here's a good one we got the other day. A good one from the other day. People are struggling to open a PayPal account without an SSN. What happens if they use their personal foreign PayPal to get paid from clients? Is it legal? Can they invoice the LLC, get paid with a personal account? I definitely touched on this in my last call, I believe. But you can open a PayPal account without a social in the US, but you can't really operate it very long without having to verify your US tax residence. And they would want to see some proof of an ITIN or a social. It's not the easiest thing, but once you get approved and set up, you're good, you're golden. But to answer the question, from a US tax perspective, if you it wouldn't be an issue. Like, there's many people who will use a personal account as long as you can show the income and the expenses and be organized and present that to the IRS. They haven't been super hard in my experience with the accounts you're using, but now with the new funding and the inflow of agents, it's possible they could give you a hard time. But again, if you're a foreign person not paying taxes in the US, it doesn't really matter from a US standpoint. It more so matters from your home country standpoint. And this is what you're doing anyways. The most important thing is to be able to get paid and deliver a good service to your clients. And as long as you got that down, then you should be fine. All the other stuff we can always figure out on the back end, especially as a non-resident. You're not going to be paying tax in the US. So let me go back to the questions from the group. You guys got a lot of people here today. Very exciting. So we answer Leon. We answer Bence. What's up, Bence? Hello, I was wondering if I can file a form W-7 with an attached 1040 NR, not in season, like now, to get an ITIN to open PayPal Stripe account for the LLC. Can I request an ITIN with the protective filings of 1040? So this is what we would do if you were working with us to get the ITIN. We would file the ITIN. We would file like a late tax return now and pay a little interest and penalties. You need to have a reason to file. And also, if you're doing it yourself, you need to get your passport certified by the embassy. Or I would not recommend sending in your actual passport. That means you're going to have it frozen with them for 8 months and they might not ever get it back. It might get lost in the mail. So I would never recommend sending your original passport. If you go to your embassy and you get a certified copy, you can surely send that. But without that, they'll reject it. And honestly, the IRS is very particular about these forms. They're happy to reject them, and they take 4 months to tell you if they're going to reject it or not. And even me, I do these professionally for lots of clients. Sometimes they just get rejected. They say, no, this we don't like it, or send us something else, or the signature is not good, or they'll find some reason not to accept it. And it's quite frustrating. So doing it yourself, I would imagine, is even tougher. And you can go for it and do it, but you don't need it for Stripe. So I wouldn't let that slow you down. You need it for PayPal, but you don't need an ITIN for Stripe. So while an ITIN does serve its purpose and it can be helpful for certain things, you don't need it for Stripe. You don't need it for a bank account. So, and many people advertise that you need it for those things, but they just do that so they can sell ITINs. You don't need it for those. You only need it for PayPal, unfortunately still. And even with an ITIN, sometimes PayPal still doesn't accept it. So usually they do. And usually we can push it through with a lot of emails and calling and stuff, but it's generally not the best option. So yeah, you can do it. Let me know how it goes. I hope this helps. I have a couple of videos on my channel about how to file how to complete the W-7, how to request an ITIN, and it's the big hiccup is needing that certified passport. Please don't mail your passport to the IRS. Sung, how's it going? I hired a freelancer to file Form 5472, but can't check if he actually filed them because he made mistakes in the past. Is there a way I can check if the IRS received my Form 5472 or not? As of today, there is not. With the increased budget of the IRS, maybe they'll make some kind of electronic way to submit these filings, because right now it's just fax it and save your proof of fax. If you don't have proof that the guy faxed it, then even if the IRS assesses you a penalty, there's no way to, you need to be able to show that you sent it. It's very important to have mailing proof or proof of transmission or proof that you sent the forms to the IRS so that they can actually, so in case there's an issue, you have proof. So there, to answer your question, there is not a way for you to check if that was filed. There's a way to call them and check about other forms, but for those forms, it's kind of just like throw it in a bucket. Hoopla or Hopla, thanks for the question. What is the best way to fund my LLC with working capital? Well, I would answer that with a simple bank transfer or wire transfer or ACH transfer, or just put money, open an account and put money in it, and it would be considered a contribution. From the US banking standpoint, they don't really ask you about receiving money very much. You just send money and it gets in your account and you are funded. So that's a real short question for you there. It's not, that's really the best way to do it. It's just to put money in the account. I don't know if that's the question you had. I'll give you a second to follow up there, because I don't think that couldn't have been your real, I mean, it could be a real question, but I think there's more nuance there, because I mean, that's a pretty simple answer. If you want to get funding from someone else, then it's to show that you have a valuable service or product and business systems, and then show it to someone else and get them to invest, and then they send you the money. But that's much more complicated and infinitely more nuanced than just sending money to an account. So thanks for the question. Follow up if that doesn't answer it. Eduardo, hi James, I have an LLC. The W-8 BEN in its fifth field asks U.S. taxpayer identification number if required, but as a foreigner, I don't have it. So if it was ever, I don't have the SSN or ITIN was ever required, so I don't have that either. Can I fill in with the company's EIN? The W-8 BEN asks for U.S. taxpayer identification number, you leave it blank. It says if required. It's not required because you don't have one. You can check the instructions, the Form W-8 BEN instructions, but you wouldn't have it. You do need to put in your foreign taxpayer number. So wherever country you're from, you need to put in some kind of tax number. If your country doesn't have tax numbers, put in your passport number. If that doesn't have passport numbers, just put in a number. That field needs to be completed, and I've seen them sent back because it wasn't completed. The W-8 BEN is not sent to the IRS. It's going to be kept by the people you send it to as proof that they checked your tax status. But you know, it's not, they're not really checking it with anything against anything else. Oh, and Marco, to follow up, if you opened a US WISE account, then you don't need to file the FBAR. If you opened a resident, it's, I don't know, I don't think you can open an LLC account outside of the US. I think you can, if you open an LLC account, it has to be a US WISE account. So I don't think you can, open a foreign dollar account with an LLC with a US company. I think if you open a US company account, it's a US located account and they're registered in the States. So I would consider a US account, Marco. I don't think you have to file. Hopla, my friend, as a contribution, I cannot get it back tax-free. Yes, you can get it back tax-free. It's an LLC. You don't pay taxes on the contributions to the distributions. You pay taxes on the profits from the business, depending on, you know, what you're doing. If I have an LLC and I make $100 and I don't have any expenses, I pay tax on 100. It doesn't matter if I take it out of the company or not. The flows from the company do not matter because from tax purposes, as a regular LLC doesn't really exist. So you can contribute and take money out of your LLC however you please without any kind of tax consequence. If it's a corporation, then you can discuss different ways to do it. Then it gets more complicated, but you said it's an LLC. Okay, my man Bob. Hello, Mr. Bob. Thanks for the question. Hi, we are finally getting our real estate investment business going. I'm so happy for you. We will still be operating as a pass-through entity. Over time, if we were to get 15 properties, our depreciation deductions could be in excess of 80,000. Would this start to get negated to the AMT tax at some point? Great technical question. Of course, the US people ask the US questions. Okay. I don't know the answer. How the best answer for that is to run some projections. I don't the AMT is usually when you're making a lot of money and not paying enough taxes. So there's thresholds for the phase outs. So I have to see how does AMT work with. It's a 6251 form. Yeah, so potentially you would have some AMT over time. There's an AMT tax credit if you don't have AMT in the period after that. But that's that's it's a separate calculation. So they changed it and they greatly reduced the AMT, but that's one of the items where they have a different depreciable life. Sure. The form 6251. Okay, 2021. Let's check out 2021. 2021 form 6251. So we're going to check it out for this year first. So the if you're married filing jointly, and you're making under $1 million, it looks like you don't really have AMT issues. If you're taxable, if your adjusted gross income is less than $1 million, it looks like you don't have to deal with AMT. But I don't have to do too much of the AMT calculations. So yeah, the best way is to run some projections. Sorry, I don't have like the best answers for you, Bob. I just haven't done a lot of AMT calculations for massively successful real estate investors. So I don't think it's something to consider to worry too much about. And also, I don't think there's anything to do to change it. You're still going to be doing real estate. You still want to run that business. So you just got to deal with whatever tax implications come, and as they come, we'll run projections and deal with it. So I don't think there's anything different that we can do to plan for that. I think it's really just something you deal with when it comes. So Yusung says, what do you think about the 5472 waivers? Let's check that out. Form 5472 waivers. You have to share what you're talking about. This is from 2017. Really, if you get a penalty, the first the only defense that is reasonable cause defense. What's the other one I said? Substantial compliance defense means that you just messed up a little bit. Third is reasonable estimates defense. Small amounts defense. It's pretty cool. I don't know what you're talking about with the waiver, so you gotta share something. Maybe you have a C corp doesn't have a bank account. Well, if you have a C corp, then you don't have to file if there is no reportable transactions. It's not like the LLC where you have to file just to pay for it. So I wouldn't amend it. And if you have a really interesting kind of situation, we probably could have a private call. Hey, Hoopla. No, the LLC is a pass-through entity, hence it pays profits. Hoopla has a great question. That's Hopple. Ah, cool, Bob. No, I can't do your Italian taxes, but I can refer you to someone. Okay, so let's go back to a great question from Hoopla. Hoopla says, I thought an LLC is a pass-through, hence it only pays on the profits withdrawn by the owners. No, pass-through means that it pays taxes on the results of the company. The owners pay tax on the results, regardless of if money was there. The results pass through to the owners. So the pass-through means the results of the company pass through to the owners, not whatever is withdrawn passes through. That's like a corporation. If you build up, and then that only works with a corporation. And if you have a corporation, then that pays a 21% tax in the US. And you can't build up the capital too much. If you have over 250,000 in the business, then they can charge you accumulated earnings tax. And that's a 20% tax on just what you keep in the company. It's like a penalty. And so you can't really do that. And then, but you could pay yourself a salary, which would be an expense to the business and income to you. So yeah, borrowing the startup capital without paying interest and minimum wage. Yeah, you can. So if you have a corporation, you can loan the company money and then take your money back after it makes its money, or you can like sell back some of your ownership. If you're the 100% owner, you can sell back shares or whatever. But whatever you need to do to get your money back, yeah, you can. There's ways to figure it out, but it's that's not what the pass-through entity is. A pass-through means that the results pass through. And to elaborate, if you have a C corporation and you can't just take money from it because that's considered a dividend and not even considered an expense. So if you have a C corporation that makes $1 million, then the C corporation has to pay $210,000 in federal taxes. That doesn't include the state taxes, which potentially could apply. Then with that $790,000 you have left, if you take it and distribute it, then you have to pay tax on it personally. And if you're a foreign person, there would be a 30% withholding unless you have a tax treaty. So it's 21% and then a 30% withholding unless there's a tax treaty can reduce it down to 15%. And if you pay yourself, it's an expense to the company, but then it's income to you. You need to make sure you do that the right way. So if you have a C corp, you don't have to report anything if you don't use it. Only your company has to report all of the results. And that's why people use C corps mostly when they're investing in the US and when they have a US trade or business, because then it keeps it easier from you having to report and pay taxes in two countries. So I think that goes through there. And then also if you have a C corp, you don't do anything, you just want to use it as fast. Oh, you want to close it, but my freelancer messed up. But yeah, so you sung if you so if you have, and also if you have a C corp and it's foreign owned, that's another requirement to file the form 5472. However, the requirements of what is not the requirements, but the definition of a reportable transaction is a little bit more narrow. So if you pay to open the company, if you contribute money, if you distribute money, those aren't necessarily reportable transactions between a foreign person and a C corp. So if you opened a C corp and never used it, you wouldn't even be required to file the 5472. You can just close the company and file the final forms. And that's kind of how that works. And the last question for Hoopla to try and close this loop, then I have to go back to the other questions. How is an LLC taxed versus if it's a single US owner versus a single foreign owner? The LLC is taxed the same. The LLC doesn't pay tax. It's like if I, a US citizen, am making $100,000 a year and you, Turkish citizen, whatever you're from, you make $100,000 a year, you are making money in Turkey and living in Turkey, you don't have to pay tax in the US. I'm a US citizen, I always have to pay tax in the US. The LLC doesn't ever pay tax. Only the owners of the LLC pays taxes. So that's how it works if you have an LLC. Like, to take it one step more broad, the LLC doesn't exist. It's a pass-through entity. It doesn't exist for tax purposes and doesn't pay taxes. So whoever owns the LLC is the one paying the taxes. Okay, I'm going back to slides. Oh, here's a good question from a US person. I'm a US citizen, self-employed, digital nomad, and almost always outside of the US. I have one offshore IBC, International Business Corporation, like a Cayman Islands Corp, and several US LLCs with various ownership and activities, domestic, foreign partners, etc. think you missed something, Danny. There's no question. So, so do I have to file? Let's answer some stuff. So, if you're in this situation, you still have to pay tax on your worldwide income. You have to disclose your ownership of these foreign companies. If the foreign companies, the IBCs, own LLCs, they have to file forms 5472. And if you have LLCs with foreign partners, those LLCs have to file partnership returns. One good thing, if you're outside the US and it's all digital stuff, then you don't have a US trade or business, and you can have foreign partners in your LLCs without having to withhold taxes on the profits attributed to those foreign partners. It's only when you have a US trade or business. So that's the only instance when it's like really easy to use an LLC with US and foreign partners. It's when you both live outside of the US. The US partner still has to pay tax on his portion of the profits, but the partnership doesn't have to withhold taxes for the foreign partners, which is really great. So the LLC is still a great option in this situation. But yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of stuff to disclose. You can probably claim the foreign earned income exclusion based on wherever your residency is established. You can claim foreign tax credits if you pay taxes in other places. And the IBCs don't really offer any kind of deferral because of the global intangible low tax income tax, the GILTI acronym for foreign corporations. There's only certain examples of when you have a foreign corporation and a US citizen owns 50% or less. Apart from the year you open and close it, you don't have to necessarily disclose anything. Only what you receive yourself would be income, but you can leave money in the company to accumulate. And as long as you don't satisfy the PFIC rules, which is offhand, more than 80% of the income isn't passive income, and more than 50% of the assets aren't assets used for production of passive income, which unfortunately cash is considered one of those. It would be worth taking your balance sheet and seeing if it classifies as a PFIC. But as long as it's not a PFIC, you can earn money and leave it in there without being subject to tax. You just have to own 50% or less. So I'm sure you had more questions, but what I have listed on here is really a statement, not a question. But I think I added some value to that statement, and I'll let if you show up to the meeting, Javier's in here. If you show up to the meeting and elaborate on that. And really quick for Hopla and Yusung, it looks like you probably don't need to pay taxes on withdrawals if you have an LLC. But it's not like with a C Corp. A C Corp is different. A C Corp does have to pay taxes on distribution. So if you have an LLC, you can do whatever you want. You can take money, contribute money, it's fine. And Yusung, it looks like if you just opened a C Corp and never even opened a bank account, you wouldn't have any filing requirement for Form 5472, and you can close your C Corp without really worrying about that. And I wouldn't file the 5472 late either. I'm learning too. Good stuff. Okay, so let me see my next question right here. Oh, good. Hi, James. Can I have 2 bank accounts linked with my LLC, Wise and Mercury? It's just that Mercury provides a card associated with my LLC to spend the money, and Wise can make and receive payments in euro as well. The answer is yes, of course. I have lots of bank accounts. I just open accounts for no reason, just to see how they work and check out the interface and the technology. I have tons of bank accounts. You can have as many bank accounts as you want linked to your LLC. There's no problem at all. And technically, if you do, now thanks to my man Marco on here, technically, if you have an LLC and it has euro accounts, actually, if it's even if it has euro accounts, you wouldn't have to file the foreign bank account report, because it's euro dollar accounts inside of a US account. So I think all LLC accounts and TransferWise are LLC accounts, and you wouldn't have to file the foreign bank account report, even if they're foreign dollar accounts. Oh man, is there a Spanish question today? Wow, we have 28 more slides. Holy moly. Okay. I have a multi-member LLC. If the other member leaves the LLC, we are both foreigners, non-resident aliens. 1, what are the tax implications? If you have no US trade or business, then there's no tax implications. You have to file different forms. 2, Do I still have to file a form 1065 next year? Do I have to file both the 1065 and the 5472? How does it change? Yes, when you cease to be a multi-member LLC, it's not a partnership anymore. You would file a final form 1065 as of the date that the LLC was closed, and probably on the prior year tax forms. But you have to change the date at the top and indicate it's final. And then if you have reportable transactions in the rest of the year, then yes, you have to file the 5472 as well. Number 3, how can I value the LLC for buyout purposes if the other part take into account no operations have been carried? How can I value my LLC for purposes of the other part of other partnerships' interests, taking into account there's no operations or sales? Well, it's very easily. If you have an LLC with no operations or sales or work or anything, the value is basically zero. So I don't know, like, why you have to pay whatever you think it's worth. The valuation is like whatever you think it's worth to have like, I guess whatever half of whatever it costs to open it, right? That would be the value if you wanted to if you want trying to figure out a valuation for the company. That's an easy question for evaluation terms. Usually valuation questions are really tough, like a 6x multiplier or whatever, depending on what you're doing. I'm a non-US citizen with a company in the EU. I'm currently having a website selling electronic products to US customers only. Furthermore, I have several suppliers from China and from the US. Some products are being shipped from China directly or from the US, depending on the supplier's location. As far as I know, I can open an LLC without tax obligations in the US, correct? Yeah, that sounds right. I would definitely recommend a US company and US bank accounts. More ways to get paid, more US dollars, especially if you're selling to US customers, and still no US income taxes. More flexibility, more privacy. It all sounds good. The follow-up questions are, can I get a PayPal account? Yes, you can get a PayPal. You do need the ITIN generally to use the PayPal, and you can keep using the PayPal you have for now. But that's fine. That works. 2, can I open a Mercury or other bank account? Yes, you can open a Mercury account as long as they accept you. I had my Mercury accounts closed recently. I think I had too many of them. I had like 8 different businesses with accounts at Mercury for different things, and they closed them all at once. And I had to figure it all out at the same time. Like, what am I going to do with all these companies? I was traveling. It was a mess. If I didn't do this professionally, it would have been a huge headache. And that's why so many people do decide to work with me, because we can solve these things for you quickly. And if you need a US bank account, I do have connections that can help you open up a physical account at really good prices and very competitive prices. And we're working on finalizing some of that stuff in the next couple weeks so that we can help you guys get that solved. I already helped my clients with it, but to make it more of an offering. Yes, you can link Mercury with PayPal. What else is needed for PayPal? Generally an ITIN and the EIN, sure. And if I open the LLC, do you provide the ITIN, and how long does it take? Yeah, we include the ITIN, and it takes 3 to 6, 7 months. But you know, this is a good thing about the IRS funding. The IRS, their $80 billion funding package is coming into play. Hopefully they can fix some of these systems and be more efficient in reviewing these applications and provide the ITINs much faster in like a 1 to 3 month period instead of a 3 to 7 month period. So yeah, we'll do it all for you, and we'll walk through you the whole way. So I think it's you know, we have a bunch of we call it the expansion ecosystem, is what we're doing with a lot of our clients. And it's basically doing the setup, of course, but then supporting you through all of the different nuances and connections and things that you need as you're growing your business, and having the support to fix these problems when they come up. I call it like business insurance. 10, do you submit all the required forms to the IRS at the end of the year, like 5472? Yes, of course. And we also do registered agent, physical mail. We do all of the stuff for you. If you want to know about what the costs are, I recommend you schedule a free call with our team, and they can figure out what the best package is or what the best service is for you, because all clients are different. Different people need different things, and it's like buying shoes, not like buying lamps. You know, you have to have the right size shoe. A lamp works the same everywhere, but it's come for the tax, stay for the comedy. Okay. Some questions already answered. I see that, Danny. Oh, that's a good question, Hopla. You have to tell me your full name one of these days. Hoopla. I'm gonna answer that one too, because I like it. if I have an LLC and I'm a foreign owner, am I liable for income taxes if I have US customers? Assuming that you're providing the service or the education or the product or doing all of the work from outside of the US, then you don't have to pay any income taxes in the US. You potentially, if you're selling products, you potentially have to comply with sales tax laws, but most of the big gateways do that for you. But for the income taxes, no. Income taxes are based on where the services is performed. So if you have a huge fulfillment center that you own personally, that would pay tax. But if you're using a third-party fulfillment center too, no taxes. It's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna switch to Spanish now. Thanks, Danny. It's 12:52. Okay, guys. Can a foreign person have several single-member LLCs all related to the stuff outside the US and not be a hold on, we stop. Give you a break for a second. I don't want to make a video about that. Leon, yes, you can have as many LLCs as you want. Let me see, pick out some good ones on here. And if you didn't get your question answered at the end, what do you think? Yeah, the waivers. You have to share more information about the 5472 waivers. I don't know what that's about. Corporate Transparency Act is not enacted yet. It was supposed to have been enacted, but they didn't give us any, there's no guidelines out for how to comply with it. When the corporate transparency, well, I guess the question is, I'll read the question, make a little snippet of this. Is the Corporate Transparency Act already mandatory? And the answer is it's not been put into effect yet. There's no way to comply with it. And once it is in effect, every time anyone outside the US opens an LLC, the people who are opening the LLC will have to do this report and submit it to FinCEN. So it's something that's going to happen with every new LLC when they're opened, and then all the old LLCs also have to comply. So it's good to open them now before it's required, especially in case you don't want to comply in the future. But I imagine in the future there's going to be some kind of compliance check or some kind of way that people are following up on that and checking on that. But right now it's not in effect. There's no like platform or address or like questionnaire or steps, so you don't really have to do it yet.